All right, class number 3. If you missed the first 2, you want to go back and review those. We're going to do more on what on earth is about to happen. If you want to get the book I wrote on the topic, What on Earth is About to Happen, for heaven's sake, go to lulu.com or someplace out there in the ethosphere, wherever it is. We're in part 4C of the book, Appendix 4C. Appendix 4 covers the whole 70th week of Daniel, talked about in Daniel chapter 9. And it says in the middle of the week, he's going to break the treaty. This is when the Antichrist is revealed. The Jews are going to think, wow, this guy is great. He let us rebuild our temple. This must be the Messiah. And they're going to realize, this is not the Messiah when he breaks the treaty. Now in 2 Thessalonians in the Bible, near the end of the Bible, Paul said the day of Christ cannot come until the man of sin is revealed. And before that, there's a falling away and the man of sin is revealed. I believe during this first 3.5 years, there will be a great falling away. People will quit serving God by the millions. Especially those, I think, who have taught, well, Jesus can come any minute. He's going to get us out of here, the pre-trib rapture, which is what I believed and taught for 40 years. We're out of here. Just hang on. It could be any minute. No, it can't be any minute. Okay, we've got some things have to happen first. And 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 said the day of Christ, which we'll get into later. That's mentioned 7 times in the Bible. The day of Christ cannot come until there's a falling away and the man of sin is revealed. So that happens in the middle of this period. Then he's going to desolate the temple. Go back to Daniel chapter 8. Back up a little bit. Daniel chapter 8. Daniel is talking about this temple, the daily sacrifice. Verse number 10. You could read the whole chapter. Some more amazing stuff in here. About this little horn here in Daniel chapter 8, verse 10. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. Here we go. This is talking about this event right here when the daily sacrifice that they're going to start doing is taken away. He's going to break the treaty. He's going to take over their brand new temple. The daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Verse 12. And an host was given unto him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Verse 13. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days. Boy, now there's a clue. 2,300 days. That's 6.5 years, roughly. And then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So this desolation is going to take place, and it's going to last for 2,300 days. That's the orange stripe, all the way over to here. 2,300 days, the temple's going to be desolate. Then it's going to be cleansed. Now, when Jesus came into Jerusalem at the beginning of his ministry, when he was 30 years old, first thing he did was clean out the temple. Toward the end of his ministry, when he came back, he cleaned it out again. There's twice when he went in there with a whip and drove the money changers out of the temple. He's going to come again and have to do that. Right up in here, when Jesus comes back, he's going to cleanse the temple again. The desolation will stop. But for 2,300 days, 2,300 days, the temple is desolate. Now, 7 years breaks into 2 parts of 3.5 years. And 3.5 years, sometimes it's called 3.5 years, sometimes it's called 1,260 days, because they use 360-day calendar. Sometimes it's called 42 months. Let me read those. They're on my chart. You can't read it, I know, from there, but it's called 1,260 days in Revelation 11:3, Revelation 12:6. It's called 3.5 years in Daniel 7:25, Daniel 12:7, and Revelation 12:14. It's called 42 months in Revelation 11:2 and Revelation 13:5. All of them meaning the same thing, 3.5 years. He's going to desolate the temple, though, for 2,300 days. That goes way beyond the 1260 days, the half of the 7 years. So this desolation of the temple is really broken up into two parts. For D, it's desolated during the time of what's called the Great Tribulation. We'll get into that in a minute. Then the time of great wrath, an extra 1,040 days. Now, some people say this desolation of the temple was already fulfilled when Antiochus Epiphanes came in and desolated the temple. I cover that in part 4C of my book, starting on page 132, or 133. Some people say Antiochus came in and he was a Syrian. He was, I think, the 8th ruler out of 26 in a row, rulers of Syria, or Assyria, up there today, the country of Syria or Turkey, Armenia, that region north and east of Israel. It is true. In about 165 BC, 165 years before Christ, this guy named Antiochus was down fighting in Egypt. On the way back home, he stopped in Jerusalem and desolated the temple, set up an image of himself or an image of Jupiter or somebody. Put it into the Jews, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Putting an image in their temple, that's the ultimate insult. So it is true. Some guy named Antiochus Epiphanes set up an image in the temple and desolated the temple. I think he sacrificed a pig on the altar or something like that. Doesn't matter for now. And so they'll say, well, this prophecy of Daniel has already been fulfilled. No, no, no. This was a foreshadowing, a type, a symbol of what's going to come. But here's 8 reasons in my book, page 133 and 134, why Antiochus cannot be the fulfillment of the prophecy of Daniel. Number 1, the desolation of Antiochus lasted 3 years, 1,095 days. If you read the 1st and 2nd Maccabees, found in the Catholic Bible, called the Apocryphal books, very interesting stories, historical interesting stories, but not part of Scripture. In about 195, 165, I don't remember, it doesn't matter, before Christ, 150 years before Christ, the Maccabee family cleaned house and got the temple back. And they cleaned the temple out. The temple had been desolated for about 3 years. Well, Daniel said it's going to be desolate for 2,300 days. Antiochus only desolated it for 1,095 days. And this is the story where they only had enough oil to burn for 1 day, and it miraculously burned for 10 days. And so the Jews started their festival of lights, based on this amazing miracle where their oil, their 1 day supply, lasted for 10 days. That's another story. But that's found in what's called the Apocryphal books, the books 1st and 2nd Maccabees, about the Maccabee family cleaning house after Antiochus had desolated their temple. It's true the temple was desolated. Later it was completely destroyed by the Roman Emperor Titus. So the desolation of Antiochus lasted 1,095 days. Antichrist will desolate the temple for 2,300 days. So Antiochus did not fulfill the prophecy. He's a type, a symbol, a foreshadowing of what's to come, and we can learn a lot from what he did, but that is not the fulfillment of the prophecy. Secondly, Daniel 8:27 says the desolation would take place at the time, Daniel 8:17 says the temple desolation will take place at the time of the end. 165 BC was not the time of the end. This is the time of the end. We're getting very close. Thirdly, Daniel 8:10 says the little horn who desolates the temple will cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground. Antiochus couldn't get up to the stars to do anything with them. He did not fulfill this prophecy. This is going to be Antichrist, Satan in the flesh. Fourth reason, the Apostle John in the book of Revelation writes that the desolation will happen in the future. Well, if John in the book of Revelation chapter 1 verse 19 talks about hereafter, if John is talking about something coming in the future, he's not talking about the desolation by Antiochus 200 years earlier. No, this is Antiochus did not fulfill this prophecy. Fifth reason, in Daniel 8:25 it says, he shall stand up against the prince of princes. That would be God. Antiochus never did that. He couldn't. Letter F in my series here, number sixth reason, Revelation 19:19. At the end of the book of Revelation says, and I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. Well, that's Jesus Christ sitting on the horse. Antiochus never did that. Seventh reason. Daniel 8:25 says, he shall be broken without hand. Antiochus died a natural death back in Babylon. Paul said the Lord himself will destroy the wicked one. That's 2 Thessalonians 2:8. So God's going to destroy Antichrist here at the end. Antiochus was not destroyed by God. He died a natural death. Last reason, eighth reason. Jesus talked about the desolation in Matthew 24:15, about it being future. Jesus said, Matthew 24:15, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation. So if Jesus is talking about it as future, he's not talking about what happened 165 years before Christ. So there are those Bible teachers who teach, oh, this desolation of the temple already took place in 165 BC with Antiochus. I'm sorry, that is wrong. Read the Bible carefully, and don't believe anything anybody says if it contradicts Scripture, especially what I say. Don't believe it if it contradicts Scripture. I want so badly to be right and to say, God, show me from your word. I was taught something that was wrong for 40 years and I fell for it. I'm sorry, God. I'm sorry. I should have read your word. So don't fall for this Antiochus stuff. Now, in Thessalonica, which is a city today in Greece, still a city over there, Thessalonica, Paul wrote them 2 letters, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians in your Bible. Every single chapter of those 2 letters, and you can read both letters in like 19 minutes, every single chapter talks about the coming of the Lord. And in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, first couple verses, he said the day of Christ cannot come, which is the rapture we'll get into, until there's been a falling away and the man of sin is revealed. The man, and by the way, all the new versions, including the New King James, change day of Christ to say day of the Lord in that verse. Boy, that's wrong. Don't do that. Get a King James Bible. It's the day of Christ, which we'll get into. But the day of Christ cannot come until there's a falling away and the man of sin is revealed. There's going to come a time when people are going to fall away and quit serving God, bunches of them. I want you to go back now to Daniel chapter 7, a prophecy we skipped. In my chart at the end of the book, we have the parallel passages marked off, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, color-coded. I think they changed the color for the second edition, doesn't it? Because the red's kind of hard to read through. But before that, there's also several more columns from the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 7, Daniel chapter 8, Daniel chapter 9, 11, and 12, color-coded based on the timeline of what on earth is about to happen. And this, sorry for my poor visuals here, this timeline covers the same thing up on the board, this timeline right here. So, in Daniel chapter 7, verse number 2, we'll take up right there. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. I think most Bible scholars agree that this great sea represents the sea of humanity. The 4 winds are fighting over humanity. Who's going to control mankind? I don't see any reason to disagree with that. I think that's probably true. Anyway, verse number 3. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Hovind translation. At the end of time, and I think this is future, this is not talking about something happened in the past. There are those who teach Daniel 7's already fulfilled. I do not believe that for 1 second. Still coming in the future. At the end of time, which is probably now, there are going to be 4 world kingdoms come up. The first one is a lion with eagle's wings. I happen to think that's probably England and America, an alliance. America's symbol's always been the eagle. England's symbol has always been the lion. By the way, it's a standing lion. I've got in my book some pictures. I used to collect foreign coins when I was a kid. Had a huge collection of coins. My dad traveled all over the place, was always bringing me stuff back, so I got interested in collecting coins. Here is a coin from 1835 from England. I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is a half penny showing lions standing. The symbol of England has always been the lion, and oftentimes it is standing up. Just Who cares? Well, I do a little bit. Anyway, so I think the lion with eagle's wings is probably the English-American alliance at the end of time. That's one of the four great beasts that Daniel sees in this vision. And it says the eagle's wings were plucked. And then the lion stood on his feet like a man. I think America is going to cease to be a world power real soon. We're going to be plucked. We're going to lose our financial dominance of the world, which could happen any day. The economy could crash, and all these Federal Reserve notes could become wallpaper. We shall see. Anyway, back to Daniel chapter 7. He saw four great beasts come, the first like a lion with eagle's wings. Verse number 5. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear. Hovind translation, I think this is probably Russia. Their symbol's the bear. And it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth, in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. Hovind translation, Russia is going to devour 3 surrounding nations, maybe Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, I don't know. But they've always been trouble for their neighbors. This bear has been. Nobody wants to live next door to a bear. And the poor folks over there in Poland and Belarus and Ukraine and Moldova and Romania living next door to the bear can tell you about it. They don't like it. So I think this is probably Russia. This is going to be a world power, and certainly it is today a world power. Verse number 6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. And the beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Hovind translation, cannot prove this. I just think there's going to be an Eastern alliance. China, Japan, Korea, I don't know. Some of those Eastern nations are going to get together to become an economic world power. There are going to be 4 of them, and they're going to be represented here by the leopard. That's just my take on this. Number 7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast. Now this one's critical. This one does not tell us anything about the beast. It doesn't say it looks like a dog or a cat or a lion. It just says a beast. That's all it says. I beheld a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. This one is different than anything else. What is this 4th beast that has iron teeth and stamps on everything? Fearless. Hovind translation. I think this is the Muslim alliance coming at the end of time, getting together now. The Ottoman Empire, which lasted really from, say, 700 after Christ until World War I, and then was dismantled after World War I, it's coming back. You watch. There's going to be an alliance of Muslim nations that are going to become a major world power, if they haven't already. Verse number 8. I don't have verse 8 marked in. Oh yeah, I do. 7. At the end of verse 7. It stamped, and the residue, it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. There we go. 10 horns. Hovind translation. I believe there will be 10 Muslim nations surrounding Israel that will really get together and make alliance. There's 50-some Muslim nations in the world. 57, I believe. It's interesting. Obama thought there were 57 states in America. I think we know where his heart is. Okay. But going to be 10, I think there'll be 10 countries that surround Israel that are going to get together and make a special treaty. Verse number 8. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. Now, the little horn is critical. You're going to see him, this little horn, mentioned again in this section, and this section, and this section, and this section, and this section. This little horn ties all through. This is Antichrist. I think he's going to come. He's going to be one of the rulers of one of the Muslim nations is going to become the Antichrist. It says, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. Hovind translation. Some leader, maybe some leader in Syria, a leader of ISIS or something, I don't know, we will see. He's going to rise to power, completely dominate 3 other Muslim countries. Maybe Syria is going to conquer Lebanon and Jordan, and we'll see, I don't know. But he's going to conquer 3. Before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Verse number 9. Daniel chapter 7, verse 9. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, that would be God himself, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That verse is going to come up again. 10,000 times 10,000. That's 100 million. Let's take a little detour here to see a few sites, and we'll come back to Daniel chapter 7. But go to Revelation, the last book of the Bible. Revelation chapter 5. Revelation chapter 5, way at the back here, since this is an informal Bible study. Revelation chapter 5 and verse number 11. And I beheld, and I heard the voice of many angels round about the throne, and the beasts and the elders, and the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000, and thousands of thousands. 100 million people apparently are going to be martyred, killed for their Lord, probably by beheading. We'll get into that when we get to Revelation, probably in about 10 years at the rate we're going here. I'm hurrying. Okay, back to Daniel chapter 7. So there's 10,000 times 10,000, which would be 100 million for you math-challenged folks, stood before him. Daniel chapter 7 and verse number 11. Oh, verse 7 at the end, 10 at the end. And the books were opened. I'm sorry, they stood before him, and judgment was set, and the books were opened. This is the final judgment talked about again in Revelation chapter 20. The books are going to be opened, and every word you've ever spoken, every thought you ever thunk, and everything you ever did is going to be brought up again at the great white throne judgment, which is also down here on this chart, but the great white throne judgment, we're all going to be there. So the books were opened. Verse number 11. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. And I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds. Coming in the clouds. We will see that again many times as we study things about the future. When Jesus was taken up in Acts chapter 1, he went up in a cloud. A couple of angels came down. The disciples are gawking up at him. Whoa, there he went. And the angels say, hey, he's coming again in like manner. He's coming back in the clouds. Matthew 24, verse 29 or 30 talks about him coming in the clouds. Mark 13, Luke 21, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. He's coming in the clouds. Jesus is coming in the clouds to call up his bride. Then he's coming back all the way to the Mount of Olives. That time he'll touch down. So back to Daniel chapter 7. I saw the Son of Man, verse 13, coming in the clouds, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. So here's the big picture. God says to Daniel in Daniel chapter 7, there's going to be 4 great beasts striving on the great sea. 4 people, 4 groups, political entities, trying to control humanity. They're going to fight, and one of those beasts is not given a particular kind of beast that it is, but it says it's a powerful beast that has iron teeth and stomps on everything. And a horn's going to rise up and become dominant over 3 out of the 10. And that's when the Ancient of Days comes and sets up his kingdom. So then Daniel is curious, hey, tell me more about this 4th beast. Daniel chapter 7, verse number 15. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit, in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me, and made me know the interpretation of things. Verse 17. These great beasts, which are 4 kings, which shall arise out of the earth. This is still future. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. Now on my chart, we have it color-coded. The purple is part 5, the kingdom of the Lord on earth. Okay? So that's the purple on this. I think Randall changed the color code, but that's fine. So the purple is the kingdom, and the red is the great beast, the fourth beast, the four beasts. So we got red and purple. The Antichrist is going to come, set up his kingdom, and then the Lord's going to set up his kingdom. Sounds simple, but when we read the next few verses, we find out there's a gap in between. This yellow part's going to come in. Yellow on this chart represents 4D, the time of great tribulation, coming soon. So look at Daniel chapter 9 and verse number 19. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. I was reading Daniel 7 over and over and over while I was in federal prison in South Carolina, trying to understand what is going on here, because it finally dawned on me. Daniel 7 is telling the same story 4 different times, adding new details each time. It's like a paint job, and I give the illustration in my book. When you do a paint job on a car, you do a light coat, and then you go back, do another coat, and then do another coat. I remember I was out witnessing one time, and this guy had his Model T in his garage, and he was real proud of it. He said, that's got 19 coats of hand-polished lacquer on it. 19 coats of paint. And it gives it kind of a depth. You can almost see through it. It's weird, three-dimensional. Well, I think Daniel 7 is giving us 4 coats of paint, 4 passes over the same events, adding new details each time. So I have them lined up. Daniel chapter 7, verse 2 through 14 is the first column, the first coat of paint. He goes back and gives a very brief explanation here in Daniel 7, 15 to 18. There's going to be 4 beasts, and then the Lord's going to set up his kingdom. Then in verse 19 through 22, there's 4 beasts, going to set up the kingdom, but in between he inserts, oh, by the way, the saints are going to get beat up. Whoa, now that's something being added in here, mixed into this. That's the metallic flecks added into this coat of paint, the 3rd level. So let's look at Daniel 7, verse 19. Then I would know the truth of the 4th beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns which were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, and whose look was more stout than his fellows. Verse 21. And I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. Now, wait a minute, I thought the Lord set up his kingdom. Well, he does, after this beast prevails against the saints. The yellow being added in. The yellow on the chart is 4D, right here, the time of tribulation. This is when it began to dawn on me, we're here for the tribulation. And with lots more evidence coming later on that. Verse number 22, Daniel 7:22. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Well, back here in verse 15 to 18, we got the beast, the 4th beast, and then the saints possess the kingdom. Here we got the 4th beast, and the saints possess the kingdom after they get beat up. He prevails against them. Tells the same story again, another coat of paint, starting in verse 23. And thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings, and shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. Verse 25. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. By the way, I think the Muslims plan on changing the calendar if they control the world. They've got a different calendar they go by. And certainly their Sharia law is very different than most countries' laws. We'll see if that's it. He shall think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time, and times, and the dividing of a time. Well, time, times, and the dividing of a time. That is the 3.5 years referred to in the book of Daniel and Revelation several times. We covered that earlier. 3.5 years. Time, times, and the dividing of a time. Time being a year, times being 2 more, and the dividing of a time, half, so 3.5 years. So the saints are going to be given into his hand to be persecuted for 3.5 years. Verse 26, Daniel 7:26. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. So Antichrist has got his plans. He's going to beat up the saints, but God's going to come set up his kingdom anyway. He doesn't care what Satan is doing. He's not scared of him at all. Verse 27. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. I thought they already had it. Back here from verse 22. Yeah, he's telling another coat of paint. There's 4 coats of paint in the book of Daniel chapter 7. Tells the story, tells it again, adds a few details, tells it again, hoping we will eventually get the message. 4th beast destroys, hurts, harms the saints, beats them up. God sets up his kingdom, and the saints possess the kingdom. We're going to get to rule and reign with Christ for 1,000 years, especially those who are martyred. Revelation 20. He saw those that were beheaded for the witness of Christ, and they ruled and reigned with Christ for the 1,000 years. So here we are back in Daniel. He's starting to tell us the story about what's going to happen in the future. Verse 27. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. Daniel 7 is telling us there's going to come a time when these 4 beasts fight. One of them is going to rise to prominence out of the 4, probably let's assume it is the Muslim Empire. They're going to persecute the saints, and then God's going to come set up his kingdom. I think it ties back to Daniel chapter 2. There's going to be 10 kings. These 10 toes, iron and clay, will not mix. During the time of these kings, the stone cut out of the mountain without hands is going to smite the image on the feet, crumble the whole thing, and the stone grows to become a great mountain, and that's the kingdom of God. So we got the same story told over and over again in symbolism. There's going to be a world empire. They're going to desolate the temple. During the time of desolation and before, many are going to fall away and quit serving God. Jesus said in Luke 18, telling the story about the unjust judge and the widow, in verse 8, Luke 18:8, Jesus said, just throws in a little sentence, a question that's never answered. Most of Jesus' questions are never answered in the Bible. Jesus said, when the Son of Man shall come, shall he find faith on the earth? When Jesus comes back, is there going to be anybody left alive serving him? I think most are going to fall away or get discouraged and quit or be killed. I hate to say this, but I think the rapture is going to be a kind of a non-event. There won't be too many going up. I think if you're going to be faithful, you're probably going to have to take a stand and be killed, probably by beheading. We shall see. So 2 Thessalonians said the day of Christ cannot come, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, until there's a falling away and the Antichrist is revealed, the son of perdition. We're going to get to see the temple rebuilt. We're going to get to see the Antichrist desolate that temple. And that's when the Jews are going to realize, whoa, this is not the Messiah that we thought he was. And Christians ought to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves and be smarter than children of this world and say, wow, we can see what's coming. Let's get ready for it. We covered that in part 7 of the book. What on earth should we do about it? So the stuff I have written in my chart, which you cannot read from there, sorry about that, we'll get better visuals. This is the time of the great falling away, 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 3. This is the time when the saints are worn out by the Antichrist, mentioned, or they're overcome, or they're prevailed against. Daniel 7:21, Daniel 7:25, Revelation 13:7, Daniel 11, 32 to 35 talks about the same thing. In my chart, we have not only Daniel 7, but 2 columns from Daniel 8, giving the same sequence, Daniel 9, Daniel 11, and Daniel 12. So you can get the book and look at that to see if you come up to the same conclusion. I can't make it fit any other way, folks. We're here for the tribulation. We're not here when the wrath of God falls. We'll get into that later in another broadcast. But buckle your seatbelts. It's going to get rough. And I think especially those who are thinking, well, nothing bad's going to happen to me. Something good is about to happen to you. They're really going to fall away when their world falls apart. And if your security in the Lord is based upon your security in this world, having enough money to pay your bills and food on the table, you're going to lose it all. You're going to lose your faith in God when you lose the comforts of this world. Wait till you go to prison and have to live out of a shoebox for 9 years, like I just did. You'll say, man, all these things in the world, they just really don't matter. None of this, it's all going to burn. It's all going to burn. What on earth are you doing of eternal value with your life? We'll take up more in the next broadcast one of these days, but Daniel chapter 7 would be a critical one to study. Daniel 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we'll get into more on what happens during this time of great tribulation. Part 4D of the book, What on Earth is About to Happen, for heaven's sake. I apologize, I'm not getting to questions. I'm going as fast as I can go. We'll get to them eventually, as soon as we can. Thank you for joining us.